Hello everyone, what is up? It is me, AlbyMTG, and for today's video I have a tournament report for you guys. The tournament reports are some of my favorite videos to make because I get to talk about competitive Magic, which is something I really enjoy, and of course if I'm making the video it means I did well enough or enough interesting things happened at the tournament that I wanted to share them with you. So of course you know that the video is going to be a good one and we're going to have some interesting things here to talk about here. So the tournament I played in today was a modern PPTQ at my local game store. And this was the deck I played. I played Green Black Rock. For those of you that don't play a ton of Modern, you might not know about Green Black Rock. It's similar to how Jund works, where you're just trying to play a bunch of really good, powerful spells. The idea behind Rock being if you just put the best spells in green and the best spells in black together and shove them into one deck, you should be okay. So that's kind of like the thought process behind why Green Black Rock is good. You're just playing some of like the best creatures in Modern, things like Tarmogoyf and Scavenging Ooze, which are just fantastic creatures. You get access to great planeswalkers like Liliana of the Veil and Liliana of the Last Hope, and of course you get a fantastic removal package as well. The cards like Fatal Push, Abrupt Decay, Maelstrom Pulse is a good one as well, and then even Collective Brutality, and then a little bit of a discard package as well in the form of Inquisition of Kozilek, as well as some Thoughtseizes here too. So it's a very nice deck, very mid-rangey, very grindy, the kind of Magic I really enjoy. And so the deck was just basically perfect for me for today. And yeah, the sideboard, nothing too crazy. I'll talk about the sideboard when we get to each of the individual matches. But you can see the deck list here on your screen. If you have any questions, be sure to let me know down below in the comments, and I'll be sure to answer them. If you want to know why I'm playing card X instead of card Y, or just anything like that, of course, just be sure to let me know. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into round one. Round one, I went up against Mono Blue Living End. So Mono Blue Living End is just a super sweet deck. The way that this deck works is it revolves around As Foretold. As Foretold says that at the beginning of your upkeep, you put a time counter on As Foretold, and then once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast with converted mana cost X or less, where X is the number of time counters on As Foretold. So due to the wording on As Foretold, if you have something that costs 0, like an Ancestral Visions, which doesn't have a mana cost, I shouldn't have said cost 0. I should have said doesn't have a mana cost. And so Ancestral Visions and Living End are both cards that they're probably the two most powerful cards in Modern that don't have a mana cost here. The way that these cards are supposed to be used is you're supposed to suspend them, and then that's how they work. But due to As Foretold says that you can just play them whenever you want. So if you just landed As Foretold on turn 3, you can follow it up by a free Ancestral Visions and then just draw 3 more cards, or you can use Living End to put some cards back into or to put some of the creatures that you've cycled away onto the battlefield. And all of the creatures here you can see have cycling. Architects of Will has cycling, Curator has cycling, Street Wraith has cycling, and Striped Riverwinder has cycling. So the goal of the deck is just to cycle through a bunch of cards. You have some control spells here with cards like Remand, Mana Leak, Cryptic Command, but then really you're just trying to beat them to death after using As Foretold to cast a Living End and then bring back some creatures from your graveyard. So the deck is super sweet. It did take game 1 off of me, but then I took games 2 and 3. I had some very decent sideboard cards here. Something like Golgari Charm was very nice in the matchup, even though I didn't end up drawing it. Golgari Charm's second mode is Destroy Target Enchantment, which is quite nice against the As Foretold, as well as it looks like this person's not running any, but Drakehaven was another card that my opponent was playing, and that's again another enchantment that I could have used. So overall, that matchup just went pretty well. Nothing too crazy happened in that matchup. Just a nice little 2-1 victory in favor of myself. Next up, I played against Red Green Eldrazi. This deck is super sweet. I really like this deck. I think it's like probably one of my top 5 favorite decks in Modern right now. Maybe not top 5 best in Modern, but top 5 favorite. I liked being able to do the broken things with Thanasia and Reality Smasher, and then Ancient Stirrings is just one heck of a Magic card. That card is just incredible. And so the way that this deck works is you're just kind of like a nice Eldrazi aggro deck. You're playing things like Eldrazi Obligator, Thanasia, Bloodbraid Elf, Reality Smasher, just trying to beat your opponent down. And so I ended up winning this one 2-1. Some of the coolest interaction I think I had all day was I brought in these Obstinate Baloths. Obstinate Baloth says if a spell or ability an opponent controls causes you to discard Obstinate Baloth, put it onto the battlefield instead of putting it into your graveyard. So I brought it in because I needed an additional creature, you know, with a little bit of beef on it to deal with these bigger Eldrazi creatures. And so this lined up nicely against Thought-Knot Seer. So I brought it in, and what ended up happening in game 2 against my my red-green Eldrazi opponent was he cast He cast Reality Smasher, and Reality Smasher has the ability where it says whenever Reality Smasher becomes the target of a spell or an ability an opponent controls, counter that spell unless its controller discards a card. So I used Cast Down as a way to kill my as a way to kill his Reality Smasher, and then with the Reality Smasher discard trigger, I was able to discard an Obstinate Baloth and then just put it into play for free. So I got to kill his Reality Smasher and put in a 4/4 and gain 4 life. So that game was pretty much over. And so I ended up winning that one 2-1 against my opponent on red-green Eldrazi. The next one we have here is Mono Green Tron. This was round 3, and this matchup is not very good for me. I would say if I wanted to avoid any matchup, and if you could tell me I could pick one matchup and just wouldn't have to play against that deck for this tournament, I would have easily chosen Tron. Tron is just very good at what we're trying to do. It's extremely hard for me to win game 1. Sideboarding games get a little bit better, but it's just it's trying to do broken things, and my deck is trying to just play the mid-range grindy kind of game. And Mono Green Tron just destroys mid-rangey, grindy kind of decks like Black-Green Rock, like Jund, those kind of builds. So I was not expecting to win this one. Game 1 went as would have expected. I lost that one quite handily, and then games 2 and 3, I somehow managed to scrape them out. They were all extremely close games, but I played very, very well personally. At least I think I did. Maybe if someone was watching, they could say I didn't play well, but these were definitely the hardest set of games that I had to play all day. Going up against Tron, the entire matchup is against me, and I needed to basically play perfectly, or as close to perfect as I could in order to take down this matchup, and I ended up getting there. One of the big pieces that led me to win in game 3 was the 2 Fulminator Mages I have here. Fulminator Mage is just a great card against Tron. Unfortunately, I believe I was on the draw for game 3, so the Fulminator Mages were a little bit worse, but what I was able to do was with Liliana the Last Hope, her -2 ability says put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard, then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So I was able to use Liliana the Last Hope to just start chaining Fulminator Mages and then blowing up my opponent's Tron lands, keeping him off of Tron, which was very, very nice because I'd be able to go, Liliana comes out on 3. So let's say I already blew up one of my opponent's land, the Fulminator's in the graveyard. I -2, bring back the Fulminator. Next turn, I take the turn off to cast the Fulminator, blow up a land, and take up my Liliana back to 2, and then I can -2 my Liliana again, get back a Fulminator, and I think I ended up casting, between the 2 Fulminator Mages, the Liliana ended up at like 6 loyalty at some point too, so I cast a lot of Fulminator Mages throughout the course of Game 3, and so I somehow managed to steal a game off of Mono Green Tron, which again I should not have been able to do. And then on to the next round. So I'm currently 3-0 in the tournament, and so my next opponent is on Infect. As there were only 3 3-0 players, one 3-0 player wasn't allowed to draw. The one 3-0 player had to play. I was the one 3-0 player who needed to play instead of being able to just draw into the top 8. So my opponent was on Infect, which of course is just a super sweet deck trying to win via cards like Glistener Elf and Blighted Agent, cards with the Infect mechanic. So they're just very strong, good cards trying to kill me as fast as possible. And luckily for me, my deck has a lot of good removal spells. We have Fatal Push, we have the Inquisitions and the Thoughtseizes to help hit some of their things and tear their hand apart. And then other cards like Abrupt Decay, Cast Down as additional removal. Even like Collective Brutality isn't the worst because most of their creatures start out small. And it gets them to use a pump spell on their turn instead of using it or it gets you to use a pump spell on my turn instead of getting them to use it on their turn where they would most likely be trying to attack and kill me. So, and then we just had a decent, number of cards to bring in. The Golgari Charms again got to come in this matchup because all creatures get -1/-1. If we take a look here at the infect creatures, all of them are 1/1s, outside of Noble Hierarch, who's an 0/1 instead of a 1/1. But I ended up getting this one 2-0, nice and easy. Managed to take down my infect opponent, which meant that I was locked for top 8. I was 4-0 in a 5-round tournament. Perfect. And so I was able to go onto round 5. Round 5, my opponent was on Jund, and my opponent and I were able to split and then just make it into the top 8. After this, I became the 1 seed because of me needing to play the round before for Infect. It gave me 12 match points, and my opponents, who were 3-0 that drew the round before, they were both only on 10 match points now, while I was at 12. So by choosing to draw with my opponent here, my opponent basically locked himself out of getting the 1 seed, which I'm okay with. I was more than happy to be taking the 1 seed. I offered the draw. He said sure. So very, very happy to have the 1 seed going into the top 8. And then I'm looking at some of the decks that are playing for top 8, and I'm thinking that I have some decent matchups in here. And so the top 8 ended up being 1 copy of Green. I'm going to try and do these in order too. So the first seed was Green Black Rock, myself, at 4-0-1. The second seed was Jund. Third seed being Jund Living End, not the mono blue Living End that we saw earlier, but instead a Jund version of Living End. The fourth seed was Boggles. Fifth seed being Green Red Eldrazi. Sixth seed being Tezzerator. Seventh seed being Infect. And then the 8th seed, my opponent, ended up being the Tron opponent that I lost before, or that I beat before. But I told you guys before, this matchup is just so bad for me. If I can't do some crazy busted things to match their crazy busted things, the game's just over. And I stole game 1, which was nice, against my opponent. Managed to steal game 1, so I thought maybe, just maybe. Then game 2 went basically according to plan for my opponent. He played like turn 3 Karn, turn 4 Ugin, and it was all downhill from there. I just couldn't find the things I needed. I think also being on the draw in that game hurt me a little bit too. I mean, being on the draw meant that I won game 1, which was nice, but being on the draw meant that I couldn't have used the Field of Ruins. Where are they? They're somewhere. Here we go. I couldn't have used the Field of Ruins or the not Golgari Charm, the Fulminator Mages or the Field of Ruins to break up my opponent's turn 3 Tron. I just didn't have the opportunity to do so because of myself being on the draw, so I lost that one. And then game 3 was extremely close. I was at 23 life at one point. My opponent slammed an Ulamog, and I got my opponent down to 3 life. So I'm thinking if I can just squeeze through a few more points of damage somehow, some way, then I'm okay. I had a Hissing Quagmire in play. Where's Hissing Quagmire? Hissing Quagmire. So this is the Manland, the black-green Manland. So it's a 2/2, so I was able to, get in a few points of damage with that if that's how I needed to do so. But what ended up happening was I drew one of my sideboard cards, Nissa Vital Force. And so Nissa Vital Force's +1 ability says, untap target land you control. Until your next turn, it becomes a 5/5 elemental creature token. With haste, it's still a land. So my opponent, he's at 3 or something. Yeah, he's at 3. I'm at 23, so I can take these Ulamog attacks. These Ulamog attacks can keep coming in. Where is it? This one. Even with exiling the top 20 cards of my library, I'm still fine to take a couple hits. I think I was fine taking 1 or 2 attacks just based off of the exile trigger alone, but I knew for sure I was good taking 2 attacks off of life total alone. So I just needed to hit an untapped land. I had 3 draw steps to hit an untapped land. Sorry, why am I back on Red Green Eldrazi? I had 3 untapped. No, okay, sorry. I am so sorry. It's been a long day of playing Magic. I had 3 draw steps to hit an untapped land to play this Nissa Vital Force, and then be able to attack with the 5/5 after he hits me with the Ulamog. Then he has no blockers up, and I can just play this 5/5 Nissa and just hit my opponent. I had 3 draw steps to hit the land, and I missed the land on all 3 draw steps. Nothing I can do about it. I mean, there's probably like somewhere down the line that I'm gonna like think of late at night tonight while I'm trying to sleep. I'll be like, that's where I missed out on like half a point of damage. But it was a really close game. It went much closer than I thought it would. This matchup is supposed to be abysmal for me, absolutely abysmal. And I managed to steal it 2-1 in the Swiss portion of the event, and then almost managed to steal it. I was one land in 3 draw steps away of just stealing it again in the top 8, and unfortunately just couldn't do it. Didn't draw the land. Part of Magic, it's a game of variance sometimes, so nothing we could really do there, but still nonetheless a good little performance from myself. The number 1 seed after the Swiss, and then a top 8 finish, so I would have finished 5th, I guess, 5th through 8th. So still not too bad for this PPTQ. I don't remember how many players there were. I want to say it was around 20 or so. So again, not the worst turnout. Pretty reasonable size for a PPTQ. Nothing too big, nothing too small. So yeah, that's basically all I have for today. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. I always love making these tournament reports, like I said in the beginning. Unfortunately, they're a little bit better to make when I win, but it's still fun to make, even just thinking back on the top 8 and some of the plays that I made, getting myself into that situation. It's just a lot of fun to think back on and to look back on it, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it just as much as I did. So with that being said, hopefully you guys did enjoy the video, and I will talk to you guys here next time for another Magic the Gathering video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this Green-Black Rock tournament report. If you guys did enjoy it, consider checking out the Patreon page where you can support me in the same way that BadWolfMTG, Jason F, and Jeremy W support me. Thank you guys so much for your support on the Patreon. Again, if you're interested in checking that Patreon out, the link will be down low in the description. Thank you so much for my Patreons. Thank you so much to anyone who just chooses to check out the Patreon, and thank you so much to you just for watching this video and sticking out to the end. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much.